I am so excited. Today, I have with me the Mather brothers, who are co owners and co coaches of the Omaha Stockmen, which is a semi pro football team that I got to work with this past year in 2024. And they're actually here live with me. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves because not only do they have a passion for football and sports, they also have an interest in mental performance. So, this is going to be a great conversation. Jason, you want to kick us off? Who are you? Where are you
Yeah.
at? What are you doing?
Yeah, my name's Jason Mather. I'm the co-owner of the Omaha Stockmen, like Amanda said. And I also, for the past couple of years, have been the offensive coordinator for the Omaha Stockmen. I was running backs coach for a little bit, DBs coach, special teams coordinator. So I've kind of done a ton of the roles on the Stockman coaching staff. I also me and Andrew are both co-founders of a nonprofit with Athletes Rise. And outside of football and all that, I'm a mental health therapist that works in schools and helps students with their mental health so that their performance in the classroom goes up as well. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
I'm Andrew. I outside of football, I am an elementary principal. And inside of football, I've been with the Stockman now for 10 years. For the first, I think it was six, I was the head coach. And then Jason and I went in on the team together. We took it over from the previous owner after he kind of moved on, and so we've been doing that now together for 4 years. And really just we just have a passion for giving guys opportunities to keep playing the game they love, whether that be guys coming out of high school that don't have an opportunity to go on, guys that have graduated from college. We just want to keep giving them opportunities. And then on the mental performance side, we've just seen the impact that it has, and that's been a huge just passion and priority for us.
I love that. And Andrew, you've been on the podcast previously with
Mhm.
your daughter who's gone through mental skills training. The question I have for you is we laugh about this as the summer went on. I learned from the fire hose more and more about football. I think it's different when you're watching football on TV versus actually being on the sidelines.
Yeah.
When you hired me as a mental performance coach, take us to the conversation that happened before I stepped on the sidelines. Like, what were those conversations like? What were you seeing? What were you desiring? You have a successful program. And just so you all know that you're listening, the Omaha Stockmen are expected to win their championship team. You guys have how many titles? Five?
Uh, four league titles and one national. So yeah.
So it's a tenured program. You're physically successful. What was that conversation where you decided to bring me in?
Yeah, I think, and Jay can speak to some of this too, but I think where we started is when you win a lot, and I'm sure some other coaches can relate to this, you start to notice maybe little cracks in the foundation, things that maybe concern you on how are we going to keep up at the pace that we're on with certain things popping up. And so some of that was just simple things like our body language, our attitudes, some complacency setting in, noticing our guys, like you said, were expected to win. And so when we would notice our guys get really down on themselves and down on the team when mistakes were made, and we had a really hard time bouncing back from those mistakes, especially in practices, preseason camps. I would argue even though at the end of the seasons we won, there was a couple games that we got blown out, and our players really struggled to overcome that. And so when Jason and I started talking, it really was a direct impact of what we saw with my daughter, Maddie, and what that mental performance coaching, the impact that that can have. And Jason being a mental health therapist, I think we both had just kind of clicked for us of this is a piece that might be missing to our team, and to our organization. And we were trying to search everything, every aspect of our organization for what can we do better to maintain the path that we're on of winning.
There's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, Jay, anything other thought you have there?
Yeah, I mean, being a mental health therapist, like I do believe that mental performance and mental health are woven. I mean, they're together. They're really, I think that these guys' mental health impacts their mental performance. And I think that mental performance was a good way to start to open that door, and have somebody else besides the people they've seen for the past 5 years say some of the things that we've tried saying to them. And naturally, I think when you look at it, men in general are going to be less likely to seek help and to want to talk about the things that are bothering them. And I think that us bringing the service to them opened up the door that, like, you can ask for help. You can get the help that you need, and your mental health perfects it impacts your performance. It does. And your anxiety, your depression, your whatever thoughts that you're going through is going to impact how you perform on the field. And we truly felt like if we are going to keep competing and winning a lot, we have to take that next step that a lot of teams don't, and help our guys perform mentally as well as on the field.
Well, and you touch on a great topic that 90% of your players, football really isn't their only thing. I mean, you probably have a few guys that, yes, they're playing for you because they want to make this their career. They're using it as a stepping stone to, get back into college or level up to another pro team. But the rest of them have jobs, full-time jobs, commitments, their fathers, family. Like, we're not talking about a group of high schoolers or even a group of college age. I mean, what's the age range of your team?
We have all the way from 18 to, I don't know, our oldest right now might be mid 30s. We've had a couple in their high 30s before.
Well, and so you look at that alone, and it's like every Wednesday you get them for a couple hours and then you play. It's like you're asking them to commit to a lot. So trying to find those, 1% things that are going to make a bigger difference. Do you guys remember the very first session? We talked about the 4 stages of buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
I was so nervous for a lot of reasons, and I'm very transparent. I remember telling the guys, I do not know football. I think I may know football, but what I do know is mental performance. And there are a lot of you in this room that are probably going to think that this is all just fluff, a crock of crap. If you've never been taught this before, all I ask is that you keep an open mind. And the vibe of that room really tested me because it was palpable. You could really feel that they were looking to their teammates. They were looking to coaches, even some of your coaches who are new to this. They're like, okay, what is this really?
Yep.
And I get it. Like, there's a lot of the times, especially with men, it's like, well, you're just going to tell me to breathe. You guys remember Dontre at the end?
Yeah.
It's like, we get through all of this training, and I said, what's your biggest takeaway? And Dontre shouts out, box breathing. We didn't even talk about box breathing. So it challenged me a lot. Can you guys talk about, how did you guys start incorporating the conversations that we were having, in the classroom to the field?
Yeah. What, you want to go, Andrew? Or you want? You looked like you had a thought, so I didn't want to interrupt.
I just was thinking, no, you're good. I think we just tried to take little things that stuck with us and tried to incorporate it in our conversation as we were talking. Whether it be, win the drive, win the play, breathing, a 0 or a 1, like the things
that's what stuck the most.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that probably was the biggest impact on them. But I would think, and Jay can speak for himself here, but I think not even always the same thing. Like, something might have really stuck more with Jay, and he'd incorporate that a little bit into, when he's talking to the guys. And something might stick more with me. Something might stick more with Shaka, our quarterback, that he would. So I don't know if there was intentional sit down with the whole team conversations outside of our meetings about what the mental performance piece looked like, but it was just starting to incorporate some of that language into it.
Well, and you guys started putting it in the group text too, just little blips here and there. So you bring up Shaka. I do want to mention this. I wasn't planning on talking about this today, but Shaka also came to me as the quarterback with the same concerns that I had of my teammates aren't taking this seriously. It really took a couple of sessions for them to, hey, I just need you guys to try this. And another myth, and Jason, you can speak to this. We just talked about this before we hit record. Not every mental skill is going to work for every kid. Same in the mental health world. And so if we're just putting a Band-Aid and telling all of your guys to just breathe, just think positive, just whatever, all these toxic myths that they've been told, of course they're going to be skeptical.
Yeah. And I think that's what I took away from it. I mean, I'm a mental health professional and I've never even heard the tale of the two wolves. And I mean, you saw my play calling sheet like that. It stuck with me. Like that story stuck with me. And I've told that to teenagers now, elementary kids. Like I use that all throughout mine. But what I took that and put that on my play call sheet was to, if I'm feeding the wrong wolf as a coach, these guys aren't going to listen, right? Like, and I'm passionate about football. I know that my negative side can come out when things aren't going right. I mean, it's your offense, right? Like, you don't want to see your offense struggle, but that can come out in the wrong way. So I knew I had to ground myself as well. And that's, that starts there, being the role model for them. But you're right. Like, some guys coming over, like, you're being a zero right now. They're going to be like, dude, get away from me. Like, I don't even want to talk to you right now. Right. Like you do have to, like, you have to learn how the guys are going to respond to those different things in their way, though. Take what you're teaching them and then say it in the way that they're going to hear the things that you're trying to teach them. And I think that was my biggest takeaway is, I know that these guys are struggling with, this is who I am and people see, and this is who I want to be. And how do I get the who I want to be out there in the way that makes me feel comfortable?
Well, and you guys know your players. I mean, it was very hard for me to learn that large of a roster. That also challenged me, but there were a few interactions, which is Gigax. Gigax is on O-line.
Yep.
Yeah. So I remember, I think it was the first Minnesota game, or no, I don't think it was Minnesota. It was the first home game that I came to. And it was one of those moments where I think it was after a loss. I think it was after that loss to Minnesota. Who did you guys play after Minnesota?
Oh, might have been St. Paul.
Red?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So the St. Paul game. Here I am on the sidelines, and I get that football is a completely different beast than the softball world. And so I was trying to understand something from Gigax, and we had a brief interaction on the sidelines where we had gone through the first half. And of course, like it's physically demanding. And I just went up to him and I said, hey, I'm just checking in. And are you a 1 or are you a 0? And I was flabbergasted. He paused. He actually paused and admitted, oh my gosh, like, just that quick check-in, I'm actually at a 0. Like if I can't fully commit to telling you that I'm a 1, then it has to be a 0. And so to explain this technique, I haven't really incorporated this with a lot of teams because it's a tricky blame, pointer finger. Don't use it as we're pointing fingers. It's a check-in. And so the idea is that in computer programming, it's called binary code. And if you want the code to do what you want it to do, it's groupings of 1s and 0s, which in computer language, it's an on or an off switch. There's no in between. And a lot of the clients that I work with, if I ask them, on their performance profiles, give me a scale of 1 to 10, they always want to give me a 7.5, or they want to give me, a 5. Oh, maybe I'm a 5, or maybe I could be a 6. And the beauty of 1s and 0s is there is no gray area whatsoever. And I think that worked beautifully with your team because it was, if we're going to be a championship team, like, you got to be in. And if you're not in, then you have to give me a 0. And there's no shame in being a zero. It's more of a, if you're listening as a coach or a parent, we don't go up to our players. I would have never gone up to Gigax and assumed what I thought he was. Because if I was assuming, I would have assumed that he was a 1. I would have gone up to him and I would have said, hey, we got the lead at half, high five, like, let's go. And he was actually at a 0. And that quick check-in with him, I think he had an epiphany of, we still have the second half of this game to finish out, and it's a 0-0 scoreboard. And I think that's something that really flipped the offense, is you got to carry the offense into the second half. And, Gigax being a leader, like, that was huge.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think when I think back, I think the 1 or 0 in a lot of ways is what propelled us in our championship game. We heard it in our pregame talks. We heard the players talking about it, but not in a sarcastic way, but in a genuine, we have to be ones today. Like, we have to be, and Jay would tell you the same thing. Our players would tell you this, a lot of them. Part of what made winning sweet is, if we're being really honest, we had no business winning that game. That team throttled us, twice this season.
So
But
let's give that context. So we're talking
yeah,
about the Minnesota Warriors, and I wrote
yep,
down these scores. So you lost 7-40, which was
mm-hmm,
a shocker for the entire
yep,
program. Like, that was like, how did this happen?
yep,
And that's when I started to get buy-in,
yeah,
because our
absolutely,
next meeting, they were like, oh, Coach AB, we might actually want to listen to what she have to say, because now we're facing down the barrel of some big failures. And then was the game after that, it was 28-33, another
yep,
loss.
yep, yep,
And you played that same team for the
yep,
championship.
yep,
Just a little
And
context.
that was like even more crushing because we were up, like we were winning big for a majority of the game and then blew it in the second half. So I mean, it was even more crushing for the guys. Like, you lose that game, right? Your mentality is a little bit different. Like, you just lose a close game to give up a big lead. Andrew and I said multiple times that we were worried that the mentality was going to start to dip a little bit, because it's like we had them. We were right there and did all this work, and Coach AB helped us do so much, and our mentality was right, and we were in the, and then that happened, and we were afraid all those skills were going to go right out the door and, right back. And it was actually really cool to see it not, and to see those skills prevail in the end, and hear them then during that championship game.
Well, and mental skills don't guarantee success either. Like,
Right.
if I could, I would be on the cover of magazines. I'd be the wealthiest mental performance coach ever. But like, that, literally, just because you have mental skills does not guarantee success. But one of the things that we talked about was compete to our standards, not the scoreboard.
yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing, is you can use those skills to put you in the right mindset, in the right place to be successful. And at least if you're not successful, at the end of the day, you can say you put your best foot forward. You were in the right mindset. You were there for your team, like all of those pieces. And I think the most telling thing for me is, so I know you weren't up at this game, but it's, we're end of the game, it's overtime, and honestly, you could see the tides turning a little bit. We had to fight back in that game to get where we were, but you could see they were starting to move the ball on us more. We were starting to not. And so in overtime, we scored the touchdown, and somebody on the sideline said to me, you should consider going for 2. And, at this point right now, the game's tied. So we go for 2, you win or lose, right there. And we made a decision to go for 2, but I was second guessing it. We ended up taking a timeout. And I cannot remember who came up to me, but somebody came up to me and literally grabbed me, like, right here. And they said, everybody on this field right now is a 1. Don't question it. Let's go. And I
Wow.
thought that really encapsulated the whole season and everything that we did with you. And I mean, still to this day we cannot find, like, I thought somebody'd have a picture or something, but you had everybody but the 11 guys on the field. You had every coach, you had every player. I mean, you couldn't have gotten tighter. We were all down on one knee, guys' arms around each other, just watching that play develop. And I mean, it was just utter euphoria after, scoring that winning 2-point conversion of guys just losing their minds. But I just felt like that. And it's tough because you don't want people to, like you said, you don't want people to be like, oh, great, mental skills, you're guaranteed to win. But I think it showed the mindset and the effort that our guys put forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And it
think too,
wasn't
like
initial.
like with athletes, it doesn't guarantee wins, but what it does is it builds resilience. I Only one team can win in every sport across the entire world. Only one team out of every team in the world gets to win in their respective sports, in their respective leagues, and all this. And it builds that resilience of, you may have lost this year, but it's coming. Your shot is going to come again. And when you use those skills, sure, maybe they don't result in wins. Maybe your team still goes and gets their butt kicked the entire year, even though you have a great mentality, but it's easier to handle and you have each other's backs. And then you rebound, you're resilient. And then that's where I believe true change starts to happen. And then you start to see the impact in performance on the field. I think a lot of teams that can be connected in that way, you're going to see them outperform even teams that are supposed to walk all over you. I truly believe that that's why upsets happen. One side had the mental advantage and had each other's back, and the other side thought that they had it won.
Yeah. Well, and competitive wise in the league, I mean, how many times did you play the same team? Bouncing back, that resilience and that tide shift. I wish I could have made that trip. It was right after the retreat, so we could have turned around
I
and
know.
see ya, husband. I've
Literally.
been gone for a week. I was so tempted. I like looked at flights. I didn't admit this to you, but I found a flight for like $200. I'm like, oh, I could just get that last seat on the plane. See ya. I'm like looking at my notes. Like, we could talk about Shaka's leadership. We talked about Gigax. Cole Malia, your kicker, experienced this firsthand. Like, without going too much into details, it was one of these moments where, like, the conversations I had with Cole of, like, if anyone else would go up to Cole as a teammate or as a coach and say, hey, like, you're better than this, you can make these kicks, until he believed that he could make those kicks. We had done a thought model with him where, your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings create your behaviors. And that's a vicious cycle. And when he started to realize what was at the root of that cycle, which is his thoughts, that was so cool to see. And he made those adjustments, like, even in the games that we lost to the Warriors, those are those games that he needed that, like, obviously Cole's not going to come out and say, like, hey, woohoo, like, I made my kicks, but we lost the game. Like, he's not going to celebrate that. But as a mental performance coach, like, even those losses, you could see those micro wins with individual players.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in Cole's case, it's hard because in a competitive game, you get people questioning you, even though they're not directly questioning you as a person. And what I mean by that is, in those situations, you start to get coaches and players that are like, hey, let's go for two instead of going for one, because we keep missing the kick. And they're not directly tearing down Cole in that case, or their kicker. But those guys in turn, I mean, that's their job. Their job is to make those kicks. And so hearing you debate, do we go for one, do we go for two? Man, I can only imagine the internal struggle there. And it makes you, we could see it in practice. It makes you start pushing harder. You're like, I gotta prove it. I gotta prove, but it backfires a little bit. And I think there's a lot of that side of, I don't know if I can do this. But again, come that championship game too, I mean, guys asked ahead of time, do we need to do we need to go for two in this game? And in the end, we didn't go for two because of anything to do with Cole. It purely was we needed to end this game now.
Right.
Or I'm not sure we would have won it. So, but I mean, man, he made some big extra points in that game, to keep us where we needed to be. So, and we believed in him the entire time. But like you said, he needed to believe in himself. And I think this was the first time he had a opportunity to see what just that process of your thoughts and the mental game and how that can all come together. I don't think that's anything that ever been presented to him before.
Yeah, there were a couple of guys that came up to me that were starting to like really connect the dots of maybe you know who this is. He plays slow pitch softball. He's like so excited. He's like, I told my friends about this. I'm using this in slow pitch. Like I'm using this in whatever other sports. Like he was playing multiple sports. And it's like, of course. Or kids that, I have one-on-one calls with. It's like, you can use this on tests. You can use this in your relationships. You can use this in tough conversations. Like if you haven't ever been taught, I say it all the time. I probably said it multiple times on the podcast. If I could redo my career, knowing what I know now mentally, and to be back in my, prime body, like lean, mean, like what? Please, can we just redo this? So what do you guys feel like were your biggest takeaways from a coach's perspective this season?
I think that there was one point where in the season where I had a conversation with Shaka because, I trust that guy. He doesn't always think I trust him, but I do trust him. And I asked him, what am I doing maybe that's not helping the offense? That's not, what do I need to do better? And he made a comment to me that he was just like, you work with kids. What would you do with kids when they were doing this or they were doing that or this was their mentality or whatever? And that really spoke volumes to me because what it told me is that we may be adults. That may be an adult football team out there, but their mental health is just as important as a kid, and humans alike we respond similarly, that we are looking for certain things to help us be successful. And kid, adult, what he made me realize is that accountability, but also you got to treat these guys like they have value, whether we are a paid sport that making millions or we're just this small-time semi-professional team. It just doesn't matter. Like they need to be valued, they need to be heard, and they need to be praised, honestly, for the things that they're doing. Because I think what these multiple players showed is, as coaches, you can get down on these guys really quick when you want to win. Nobody wants to come out onto a field, spend a bunch of time preparing, and then we lose, right? Nobody wants to do that, but coaches can then also hit that zero mark, and that bleeds down into the team. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from the year, is that not that I'm going to treat them like kids, but that the mentality is very similar, of what we just as human beings need to be successful.
Well, I want to point out what you said. You said that, they want to be praised. It's a very slippery slope. And I experienced this firsthand. I hated being the bad guy as a head coach, and it's a slippery slope. And you all know me, like I'm super positive. I want to be that hype girl. And you get into these coaching environments and you're looking at that scoreboard and you're looking to get that dub. And it's like, you forget the basics. You're like, my job as a coach is to fix. What do we need to fix? What did we do wrong in the game? What do we need to fix at this week's practice? And I need to make sure that my girls, my guys, they know exactly what they're doing wrong so we can fix. And then lo and behold, we wake up one day and we realize, when was the last time that I praised them for what they're doing right? It's like, ding, ding, ding. And if you're listening and you're like, oh, that would never happen to me. Like you've never been a coach. Like you've never been a head coach at a high level. Like it will happen to the best of us. Like
Yep.
that makes me alive. Again, going back to redos, can I redo being a head high school coach? No, thank you.
I think for me, my biggest takeaway, honestly, is very simple in that the mental performance game works. It works, it's impactful, it's important. Our world is so different, our kids are so different, our adults are so different than even 10 years ago. And I honestly think anybody that doesn't see the value and try to incorporate these pieces into their programs is really just missing a golden opportunity to impact the lives of their athletes.
You don't have to wait until something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys were, I want to reiterate, tenured, successful program, roster, deep depth chart. Like you guys had all the components, and I get that a lot too from parents and teams. You know, like I've had championship level teams at the high school softball level that they don't pull the trigger on mental performance, and then they get to where they're expected to win, and then they wonder, you know, what could we have done differently? It's like you can be neck and neck physically, and all it. Well, I mean, what do you think what conversation do you think the Warriors are having? Right, like at that point, the championship game was mental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Well, one more question. So, Rise as One was kind of your theme, which was so cool that just matched perfectly with ones and zeros. Can you talk more about Rise as One? Where did that come from, and how did you guys use it?
Yeah, so when I've coached at a bunch of different stops. I've coached NAIA college, I've coached indoor, and my thing had always been that from what I had learned from other coaches is like each year you have a different theme, or each year you have or each game you have a different theme. And we've actually used Rise as One now, I think for 3 years. That's really what we've stuck to because it really has embodied everything that we uh, believe in our program, which is we are one team. And we really try to it's hard enough in sports when guys are getting paid and things like that, but in our level, it is really easy to become about yourself because you're not getting paid. You're not, and so it's about me. I want my stats. I want my recognition. And so we really had to. I mean, a lot of people don't know this about the Stockmen, but there were days that 10 years ago, 9 years ago, that we were getting blown out 70-0 every game. And we really had to sell people that came to play for us on we are one team. And until we everything we do is about the team, we're not going to be successful. And when guys stopped caring, and I mean, they still want their stats in there, but when guys really genuinely stopped caring who got the credit, who got the tackles, who got all these pieces, um, that's really when I think you saw a big turn in our organization. And so that's where Rise as One came from, is literally we rose as one team out of, uh, we joke, the depths of hell, and became what our team is. And so really we've latched onto that and kind of kept that at the forefront of what we do.
Which the alumni, I mean, the previous players that would come to give pregame pep talks and hang out in the stands at games, it was like this expectation of like, well, this is who we are now.
Yep.
And there was a little bit of jockeying and like, you know, a few jabs of like, what, I can't remember which game it was. It was after we lost, and it was like, come on guys, like, what are you doing? You have to win. It's like, you're not seeing what we're working on the inside. And so to see the previous guys come in and kind of give them those pep talks, it's like that outside pressure and the expectation to win was so real this year.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
This is a great conversation, and I just want to say thank you. And I've told you both this, but thank you for pushing me as a mental performance coach. I really think that this has made me it's it's opened my eyes not only to different sports, but how men are wired differently than women, and just the pace of sports, right? Like you don't always have, a whole inning to do a failure reset routine. Like it's a different pace, it's a different environment, definitely a different environment, being on the sidelines. So thanks for having me.
Well, I mean, I appreciate a ton that you were willing to step into something different, because I knew you could. I had no doubt you could have an impact. And I remember texting you and saying, "Hey, how would you feel about stepping into the football world?" And you were like, "Call me."
That's probably a long conversation.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it was awesome. I think good for you, but also good for us. Like it's a not was is it's a great partnership, and I know I can speak for Jay too that we appreciate all that you did and the work that you put into it.
And you guys are
We
doing
wouldn't have won without you.
and it's the guys and the buy-in, and again, going back to that Rise as One, is like we could have reached a point where it would have been an impasse. Like they didn't have to buy in. They started using it. So, and you guys are doing some really cool things with girls flag football,
Yeah.
which is cool. So, we want to keep this short, so maybe we'll just have you back on. But you guys are growing youth sports in a really cool way, and partnering with the retreat, and just the impact, and it's symbiotic. Is that, come on, teachers, help me out. It's a symbiotic. It goes both
I'm
ways.
a therapist, not a teacher. I don't. I don't teach grammar. I probably don't even use it right.
Yeah, it goes both ways. So I appreciate you both very much, and yeah, we'll get this episode pushed out and continue to carry on the Stockman legacy.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.